welcome to this edition of Colors of Life. Today we'll be speaking to someone who's an inspirational speaker. He's a social entrepreneur. He's an educator. He has a burden for national transformation, and he believes that leadership and proper planning for succession is crucial to this. Join me to welcome the General Overseer of Guiding Light Assembly in Ikoyi, Lagos, Pastor Wale Adefarasin.
Thank you very much.
Pastor Wale, it's so good to have you on this program. And you're also an author.
Just about.
So, holding your book, The Succession Crisis in Nigeria. To me, it's about leadership. And it covers leadership in government, in the corporate world, in the church, of course, and in the family. But today I want to narrow into the church, and the family. I'd like to first ask, what made you write this book?
I was really concerned that if you don't have generational succession, you're going to end up in chaos. The trees have generational succession. They pass the baton on. Animals have generational succession. And we humans are built to be able to empower successive generations. Now, if you take a look at the Nigerian setting, you'll find that companies don't last very long beyond the life of the founder, that law firms, hospitals, almost anything tends to go on a downward spiral once the founder is no longer around. That was the inspiration to write the book.
And now, in referring to Nigeria's case in particular, I'd like to quote you here. You said, "I'm convinced that at the core of our national malaise in Nigeria is a catastrophic loss of values." Tell us about that.
We are rated as one of the most corrupt countries on the face of the earth. We're violent. All you have to do is drive on our roads and see that there's no courtesy shown on the road. So if you just take a look at our national life, you'll find that people do not seem to have priorities or values in their lives.
Yeah. And I'm going to just refer to an interesting example you cited in your book. And I'm going to ask you, where did we get it wrong? Because you have rightfully pointed out that if we're able to get it right at the family level, then things would be better. It would have a rippling effect to the wider society. You talked about a scene you witnessed in a school near your home in Ikoyi, where a driver came to collect a child, and a child looked at the car and said, "You brought the wrong car. How can I go home in this car?" And what is more interesting is that the child refused to get into that car till they had to call the dad, and they sent the right car. Now, where did they get it wrong to produce this sort of child? Or where did we all get it wrong?
Well, first of all, I dare say that if I had been that child in my generation, I would have got a thorough spanking.
Yeah.
Now, if the family is a good measure of what's happening in the larger community. If you have dysfunctional families, you'll end up having a dysfunctional community. Now, where did these parents get it wrong? A lot of parents don't have time for their children. They don't have time to bond with them, to understand them, to teach them, because there's a lot that the child needs to learn from the parents, especially in their first 10 years. And so a lot of parents are throwing money at the children to make up for the time that they're not spending with them. So talking about which is the right car, which is the wrong car, is a function of money. So a lot of parents have taught their children that you deserve this level, this is our lifestyle. I also find it a problem flying your children first class.
Yeah, you mentioned it
in the book. Because the child has not earned a penny, and when the child has to earn for himself or herself, how will they prioritize the use of their money? You know, so their parents are not teaching them how to recognize that money is a finite resource, and you know, can't be used to do anything. I'll give you another example.
Okay.
A parent was telling me that he went to pick his daughter from school, but he went in a car that was not the car he regularly used. He sent his car in for maintenance. It was a small, really small car. And he saw her as he was driving to the school, and she disappeared. She hid from her classmates because she didn't want to be associated with the car that her father was driving. So we need our children to understand, first of all, that you're equal in the sight of God, okay? But in society, we need to teach them humility, okay? Because as the scriptures say, God resists the proud, but he gives more grace to the humble. So there's lots of things we need to teach our children at home.
We find out that the children are usually closer to their moms, and even with the boys. So as they're growing up in their teenage years, they tend to go to open up to their moms rather than their dads. How can you help the dads? Or what can you tell the dads?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we're trying to do.
Okay.
We have a men's fellowship in church. Okay. And so, and many men come because we make it as informal as possible. And we talk. We talk to one another, and we talk about these important things, about the way they treat their wife, about the way they treat their children. These are all important things. So it's really just joy with the men.
Thank you so much, Pastor Wale. We're going to take a break, and I'll be talking to your son, Pastor Adeolu, who happens to be as a pastor as well. And then after I've talked to him, 3 of us will have a conversation. Let's see how this success thing is playing out in the Wale Adefarasi family.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I've been talking to the General Overseer of the Guiding Light Assembly in Ikoyi, Lagos, Pastor Wale Adefarasi, who has a heart for leadership, succession, deliberate succession planning in Nigeria, in the corporate world, in family, and in the church. So we'll take a break now. Stay with us.
Colors of Life.
Welcome back to Colors of Life Ministry. In this edition, we are talking about succession and how it is important to be deliberate about the plan to pass on the baton from one generation to another. In the first part, we talked to Pastor Wale Adefarasi of the Guiding Light Assembly. And now we're talking to his son, Pastor Adeolu Adefarasi. So join me to welcome Pastor Adeolu.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Pastor Adeolu. It's so nice to have you on this show.
Very nice to be here.
I must say, the last time I remember you, you were in St. Saviour's School. And now here you are, I'm calling you Pastor. What happened?
Life. No, I mean, life is very, very interesting and clearly very unpredictable, and yeah.
So I know, like, you know, you went off to secondary school, A-levels, and then you studied, is it acting?
Yes, I did.
Went to film, is it
I
drama
went
school in New York?
yes, I went to, so I did my degree in acting in the Arts University of Bournemouth in the UK.
Okay.
And then in New York, I went to New York Film Academy.
Okay.
Yes.
And when you were studying acting and, you know, going to the Film Academy, were you planning to get into Nollywood, or were you planning to be a pastor?
Nollywood. Well, not even Nollywood, Hollywood.
Okay.
But life throws things at you faster than you can expect. But I definitely didn't anticipate ministry. Okay. But God has his ways. I think that when I had gone to New York, he definitely used that as a season to start developing my relationship with him a lot deeper. Okay. And I did that. I moved back to Nigeria. I still didn't see ministry as where God was calling me. But in the process of acting, and I'm still acting, okay. It started to pull out the call and the importance for this generation. And it started with acting in the roles that I take, and also affecting the entertainment space and understanding the importance of values and godly values going through different forms of things other than just the church, but also in the entertainment space and the people that have real influence in different areas, speaking and living godly values. So that's how it started for me.
So at what point did you discover Adeolu's God, not just God of Pastor Wale and Pastor Laolu Adefarasi?
Yeah, so I won't say I ever had like a huge crisis point, but I never went extremely to the other end, but I definitely, I think I was probably coasting at a point. But when in end of 2012, beginning of 2013, I had a bleed in the back of my eye, back of my left eye, and I had to have a surgery on it. And the surgery itself went well, but it had its own complications. I went through a lot of pain. The vision in my left eye went for a little bit. But in that process, I started realizing, I remember my mom had come to England. She was there when I had the surgery, and I started leaning in the songs that she was singing and the songs I was singing. I started realizing I was so dependent on my parents' relationship with God, I didn't have my own personal relationship with God. And so that was one of the things that brought me to a point of understanding the importance in developing my own relationship with God. And then when I moved to America towards the end of that year, I think the distance also helped me. It wasn't one of those things where you think, oh, you can just call mommy and daddy whenever you have something wrong, but because there was that time difference and all of that, I started going to Hillsong Church, and I started building a personal relationship with God, having more of a curiosity for reading the Word and understanding it, as opposed to calling myself a Christian by title.
Okay, amazing. And I know you were telling me about the interesting ways that you were reaching your generation and even younger. So tell me about that.
I mean, so the entertainment space, I think one thing that happened first off is that you hear a lot of talk, especially if you're in the entertainment industry, that you think, you know, the things that go on and people don't love God and how you're going to manage being a Christian and being in the entertainment industry. But what I found is the more open you are about your faith, and I realized it wasn't that I was ever trying to go on set and be evangelizing, but the conversations naturally would lead in a certain direction, and I started finding people that that honestly love God and how to have a heart for God and want to be of impact in the entertainment industry, but working out how to do that. So from there, I started a fellowship for Christians in the entertainment industry. And then beyond that, through the Manifestation, which is a conference we have at Guiding Light through Ignite, our youth fellowship. Okay. That has had serious impact and is growing. And then beyond that, it gave me the idea for a talk show. So I have a show called Shop Talk, and the heart behind that was really leadership. If men are called to be leaders, head of homes, how are men supposed to do that if men are not coming to church, if men are not looking, seeking relationship with God? And so the idea behind that was really to get men in a comfortable space where we can have honest, open conversations, which, you know, stereotypically men are not known to have. Yeah. And then kind of subtly feed in the God factor and speak God values into those situations, be it to, you know, from my perspective, I'm not yet married, what it's like dating, what you look for in relationships, understanding people in different areas, finances, business, career, and just understanding those different things and kind of feeding in the godly values to that.
And you're the baby of the family.
I am.
So do you wonder, Lord, why me? You know, Demola is doing his thing. I know everyone's serving the Lord, but in the circular, you know, Ademide is doing her thing. Why Adeolu?
Yeah.
Why did the mantle fall on me?
It's so... there are things that I can't conceive of, but I always wonder, because there are definitely times that I question and I wonder how, and I still wonder how the things that I believe that God has put on my heart to do, how they're going to manifest themselves. But you know, around the time of the first Manifestation, which is the conference that Ignite do, the guest speaker Heather Lindsay spoke about Joseph and from the dream to the palace, the process. Now, my name is also Joseph, like my dad. Okay. But all the first sons have been named Joseph, but I'm not the first son, and I'm the one named Joseph. And I always used to wonder. And I remember just after the Manifestation, I had an interview, and I knew they were going to ask me what am I doing next, acting-wise. I had done stuff, but I had no jobs lined up. I didn't know what was happening next. And so I was worried about the question coming up in the interview and what would I even say. And that's when God reminded me about Joseph and the process. And so I came to this realization that my parents didn't name me Joseph, God did. And so there are plans that he has, and there are things that I will not have the understanding of how they're going to come to fruition, but I trust with patience that that God has things planned. The same way that when I went to America, I was chasing an Oscar, I was doing things for my own motive, and God used that time to develop my relationship with him. I can't, there's some things I don't have the answers to, but it's just by trust.
By trust, I like that. So that's a good place to take a break. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll have yourself and your dad, and we'll conclude with that. So I've been talking to Pastor Deolu Adefarasi, son of Pastor Wale Adefarasi, and we're still talking about leadership, intentional succession, particularly in the family and in the ministry. So don't go away.
Colors of life.
Welcome back to our Colors of Life show. Today we're talking about leadership, and in the family in particular. We're looking at the issue of generational succession. And I'm talking to Pastor Wale Adefarasi, author of The Succession Crisis in Nigeria. And in this final segment, he's joined by his son, Pastor Deolu Adefarasi. Pastor Wale or Pastor Deolu, welcome.
Thank you.
Wow, it's so nice to see father and son. And here we are talking about succession. I think I'll first ask about your father and Deolu's grandfather. Could there be something that you learned from him that has given you this burden to talk about succession, and particularly to talk about families and leadership as fathers?
Well, first of all, my father was a Christian.
Okay.
And he became a lay reader
Okay.
in his church. That meant he had a license to preach at church, and he often preached almost every Sunday. And then he was chancellor of the Diocese of Lagos under at least 3 bishops. Okay. So we had a tradition of Christianity. I mean, we were going to church every Sunday family. Okay. But one of the things that we certainly had was we were taught values. Okay. I remember almost as often as we got reports from school, we were told an education is the only legacy that parents can give their children. And then we were told honesty is the best policy. So we had a lot, we were bombarded with various values. And then my father prided himself on being a man of integrity. He was on the bench, so he had to dispense justice. So certainly you couldn't grow up in that home and not have a leaning towards doing the right thing and having the right values. And really, values are really just what are your priorities in life. That's what a sense of values is. Okay.
But did your father think that his 3 sons would be pastors? Is anyone a lawyer amongst you?
None. Okay. None. No, my father, I was ordained a pastor 2 days before he passed. Oh. And I didn't tell him I was being ordained because I didn't want him, I knew he couldn't attend. Okay. I didn't want him to feel bad that he couldn't attend. Okay. But he found out from somebody after the fact. And he said, oh, you ordained a pastor today and you didn't tell me. Yeah, he was prayerful. He's been involved in many things. He founded the Christian Laity of Nigeria, which is a group that bring laymen together to have a national prayer breakfast every year, and who do quite a number of things. So he's been involved in many Christian efforts, and philanthropic efforts as well.
Yeah, but how did 3 of you become pastors? Did you plan it?
Absolutely not. I was the first to become a pastor. Okay. And then my brother Paul followed. Okay. And then came Yemi. I don't think we didn't discuss it. It just happened.
And here we are with Deolu. He's now a pastor. So Deolu, because you do have your parents' faith, then you have so was it something you saw at home, or and you find yourself?
I can't say. I don't think I saw it. It's not something that I ever imagined growing up, even up until not long before it happened. It's something that, I mean, and maybe in the last couple of years, I saw that God was calling me to ministry. And I knew that there would be a call to pastoral and for me also to the evangelistic, I believe. But that beyond that, it wasn't what I had conversations about. One, because I was working out within myself and struggling with the with the fact that, you know, how would I even carry this mantle and understand what it looks like, what the duties of it are, and understanding the call. And it was until I got to a position where I felt certain that whether I knew how it was going to happen or not, that I believe that God has called me to something and I must step in what God has called me to. I remember I watched a sermon by a guy called Owen McManus from a church called Mosaic in LA online, and it really convicted me. And I remember because my parents were out of the country, so I called my dad on FaceTime and I was like, I'm ready to step into it. Like I was like, I'm ready to speak. Like I'm ready to preach on a Sunday. After that phone call, I was like, why did I do that? But but I feel like it's something. It maybe obviously growing up around it, there's an aspect of that, but I believe that it's something that God pulled me to very individually.
Yeah. So Pastor Wale, you've talked about your father's service in the church, but what about the family life at home? Did you grow up, you know, like praying together?
Yeah, we had a morning prayer meeting, and my father would make one of us lead it, but we weren't able to sustain it for too long because boarding school, one, and then timing. My father was always out of the house at 7 a.m. And then we would have to start the process of getting ready to go to school. So it wasn't something that was sustained. But as a family, we went to church together, and we knew that he wanted us to go to church. As a matter of fact, when we moved to Ikoyi, we started attending St. Saviour's Church. It was called St. Saviour's Church then. It's Our Saviour's Church now. And my father would still go to All Saints Church, Yaba, because he had responsibilities there. And one day I said, Dad, I'm going to follow you. I'll be going with you to church on Sunday mornings. And so he thought, how nice my son to come to me church. Little did he know that the Queen's College girls did their church there. And so I had a girlfriend in Queen's College that I used to go to see. So. Okay. But I told him before he passed anyway, that's what was going on.
You did. Okay, so Pastor Deolu, was there something at home? Was there like, you know, this praying together?
Yeah, I mean, especially when we moved to England, we always used to do Bible study in the mornings with my mom before we go and pray before getting ready for school. But, you know, similar things, we started going to boarding school. It's not something that sustains itself. But... and also when I moved back, we started doing communion together in the evenings to start. And so there are always little things, but I don't think it's so much about those. It's about just generally watching and seeing. So one thing I've learned more than anything is, even if you don't have specific conversations about specific things, you're seeing the values consistently. Like people say I look like my dad. I don't. Personally, I've not seen it. I don't know how to, I've never been that person that sees those kind of things. But then you start to realize with time that you have similar mannerisms and all those kind of things. I think that certain things just imbibe naturally or subconsciously.
So thank you so much. I think there's no better example than seeing that you're serving God and your children are serving God, and one is even a pastor. So this succession that you're preaching, I think you're living it out. So Pastor Wale and Pastor Deolu, thank you so much for taking time to join us on this edition of Colors of Life. We've really learned from this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on this edition, we've been talking to Pastor Wale Adefarasi and Pastor Deolu Adefarasi on the importance of succession planning from one generation to another, how important it is for the leaders, particularly in the home, to model Christ by their lifestyle and bring up their children to serve God. We look forward to being with you same time next week. Do follow us on social media, and thank you for taking time to be with us today.